Hello and welcome to today's lesson. We are going to work on how we can build a Schoology quiz from randomized test banks. Now, in order to build a quiz that can pull from test banks, the first thing that we have to do is set up a resource. Okay, I just clicked into resources in personal. Okay, we'll set up personal resources. If you have a group resource that you want to pull from, you can definitely do that as well. So that's something that your tech coach can help with if you want to have a group resource versus a personal resource. So once you're in resources, you want to add a folder for that unit. Really try to think about how you want to have things organized in this situation. So I'm just going to call this test 1 for practice. And now you've created that folder. Once you have your folder created, what you're going to do is going inside that folder, now you're going to add an extra level of resource. And this is where we start to build the question bank. Now, it's not a traditional folder, but it is adding a question bank folder inside that test 1 and make sure that it has that puzzle piece hanging outside of it. So now if we go back into, and I've got one of these already built, so this is that cooking magic right here. So I've got my geometry part 1. I've got our unit 9. That's one of the first times we tried using this process. So inside that folder, what we've done is we have a question bank set up for every type of essential learning that we want to be able to assess students on. And by having these question banks, students know, and we'll even show them this, these are where your questions are coming from, these are the questions that you're going to be asked, but what they don't know, and they can't know because this is going to be randomly given to them, is what question they're going to get. So this does take a little time to build out, but once it's built, it's really worthwhile overall. So then, like any other quiz, you would go in and build out all of your questions. So all of these questions are similar in concept, but they have a different graph, a different answer in the end. So now that we've got each one of these all built out, and you can see that, 8 questions in this one, 6 questions here, really trying to get 5 or 6 questions from each type. So when a student gets their randomized set of questions, they're not going to know, is my question matching Janie next to me or Johnny in front of me? I don't know. I have to focus on the questions that I get and show what I can do on that material. So now, once you've gone through, you've built the folder in your home of your resources. Inside that folder, you have all of your question banks added. And then once you have the question bank, then you put the questions inside of that bank to pull from. So once your question banks are built out, the next thing you're going to do is going into your course, and I'm going into my geometry part 1 because that's where this test is going to pull from, or pull into, okay, down in my unit 9, okay, unit 9 test, and I'm going to build this quiz out. Now I already have other quizzes for the R3 questions, the R4, but in this situation, I'm building a traditional quiz now, just adding a test or quiz. This is going to be my Unit 9 test, and these are the R2 questions. Okay, so my Unit 9 test R2s, in this situation, I'm going to set it up as ungraded because I don't want this to show up in their grade book that the students get to see and parents can see now. So I've got this set as an ungraded, but I will still be able to see their responses and record their answers in my grade book. So now, in adding questions, we want to add questions. Normally, we would put the individual type of question in, but now we're going to pull from question banks. And since we have multiple questions of each type, we're going to want to pull random questions, and then it's going to ask us where we want to pull these questions from. And notice it clicks right back into my home. I can go to other resources if I have that set, but I'm going right into that Geometry Part 1 folder that I created. I've got my unit folder, and then here are all of my essential learning ideas, question banks built out. And the easiest way to do this is once you have your question banks set, you want to click on these boxes because we can have it pull from all of them and set this up at one time. So now that I've got the question banks that I want to pull from, I select that, and then I can say how many questions that I want. Normally, we just have one question from each bank. Since we don't have the 8 questions that we're looking for every assessment, we're using this Pythagorean theorem, solve for a leg. We want 2 questions to come from that. And in this scenario, we're just setting every question to be 1 point right or wrong based on how the scoring was set for the individual questions. So I'm pulling 1 question from each type here. And by doing this, I've now created a test that has about 2 million different outcomes. So there is no way that one student sitting next to a friend is going to get the same assessment and be able to share questions back and forth. So that's the major advantage to doing a randomized quiz built from question banks. Now, one thing that happens all the time in this setting is you build these questions, you're doing them the best you can, but this takes a lot of work and it's easy to make mistakes. So if you do happen to make a mistake on an answer key for any question, we want to go over to these side tabs that we have right here, and we can click into that, and we can actually go in and edit any of these questions where a mistake was made. Now, one thing you want to be careful here. This is just editing in the quiz that you've set for yourself. This is not editing the question back in the original test bank. So you want to be careful. If you make a mistake here, unfortunately, there is 2 places where you have to go in and make that change once it's built out overall. So now we've got it built out with our questions, and then we have to go into our settings and make sure that it's set properly. One thing that we do for our assessments is we're always setting them on a time limit. For 8 questions, we're usually giving students about 20 minutes time to finish those 8 questions so they can do all the necessary computations, but you can set that time how you would like. You can give them multiple attempt limits. The good part is every time they do a new submission, they're going to get a different set of questions. So this allows them to make mistakes, correct mistakes, get a second attempt. Randomize order. When it's pulling from a question bank, I'm not really worried about things being randomized order. So one advantage here is I like to keep it on using page breaks. This allows the student, when they open up their test, they get to see all of the questions that they are assigned, and they can go through, pick and choose, and do them in the order they want instead of doing them one question at a time. Okay, then you can choose whether you want them to be able to review, do you want it to be resumable or not, and then do you want them to be able to see if it's right or wrong, that's the yes, or right or wrong with the correct answers. Okay, so we choose all of our settings. Okay, in our scenario, we like to have it chosen so they can see whether it's right or wrong, but not what the correct answer is for that situation. Like with all Schoology quizzes, it's really important to save changes in the end. So that's how we go through and build a randomized question inside of a test bank, inside of a folder. So I've got it built out now, and I can use it across multiple classes, multiple platforms. I hope this was helpful, and have a good day.